Well, hello. Today is Friday, May the 29th. Wow, this month is really almost over. Um, I'm going to give it a couple of seconds because I know a couple of people were scheduled to try to join me today. And so, as we get started, it's always good to do a check in, see how everyone's doing. You know, I know things on the various platforms right now, to put it politely, are a little tense, a little tense. So I just thought it was really important today that we spend some time and just talk about ways that we can, as I say, sometimes disagree, right? My camera's messed up. But anyway, ways that we can disagree and not be disagreeable. So this is very interesting. I'm going to end my watch party and start it over because it looks a little goofy. So when we talk about being disagreeable, often we all know what that looks like, right? When you're disagreeable, you're difficult, you're contrary, things that I would just say don't get to a resolution. And part of the reason I'm talking about this today, I'll just be fully transparent. I have found Facebook and the other mediums the last couple of days to be just a tad stressful and high anxiety. And I'm a person who very seldom gets stressed. My outlook it just tends to be, see the good. Oftentimes I'll ignore, things that I don't think make sense to me. Another thing that I'll do is, I'm just being really transparent. There are certain people, though I may be their friend, I do not follow them with any regularity. And so what I mean by that is I mute them. Or maybe what I'll do is I will, not see their posts because I find them negative or contrary, or for just lack of a better phrase, they don't add any value to my life. There's a saying that says, well, I'll say all the time things like, how does this serve me? And so when I read things and see things, the question for me is always, how does this serve me? Like, how am I better off having had this interaction or this exchange? So as a result of that, there's some people I ignore. But in times like these, I probably ignore a lot, but I read a little bit more because I'm curious. I'm curious as to how people feel about certain things. Because I see it as a deeper reflection of some other things. And I'm sure they're doing the same thing about me, right? Hey, Linda, how are you? And so right now, let's just be really honest. There's a lot of disagreements happening. Whenever there are situations, there's always sides, right? And so this happens every day, though. It happens in the workplace. It happens in families. Definitely happens a lot on social media. And so the question becomes, how do we express ourselves and still remain as passionate and, dedicated to what we believe? So in other words, we may disagree, but not become disagreeable. So part for me, and I do, conflict resolution training often in workplaces and things like that, is helping people to understand, number one, is we don't have to agree. There is no requirement in any relationship that says that I have to agree with you or you have to agree with me. But I will say, in order for me to feel like I am valued in the relationship, it means that I should have freeness of speech. But it also means that my views and my opinions are not negated or spoken about or responded to with disregard. And there has to be an awareness to know when is it an appropriate time to say things. So let's take it off of the issues today. Let's just say theoretically, I'm talking to my husband, and I've known this to happen, so I'll use this as a great example. Let's say, we just had a kid, and so I am within that first year of having a baby, and I am struggling to lose my weight. And then I say something about it. The wrong thing for him to do in that moment, whether I'm overweight, I'm not like exercising like I should, and all these things could really be true. If in the moment I said that I feel bad because I can't fit my clothes or something, the wrong thing for him to say would be, yeah, because you eat too much, or you don't know how to pull away from the table. Because that would feel insensitive. It would feel as if he didn't care about me and that he wasn't being empathetic, because clearly what I'm expressing is my own displeasure with where I am right now. And anybody I would probably tell that story to, they would be like, oh my gosh, I can't believe he said that to you. But then we come into people on social media and someone says, I don't feel valued as a person, or I don't feel valued because of the color of my skin, whatever the thing may be. And somebody then responds, yeah, but what about abortions? Or something that's totally unrelated. And so what I think we don't understand is that's where the disagreeableness comes in. Because people are saying, you don't even have to agree that I don't feel valued. It's okay if you don't see that from my lens. But what the heck does it have to do with that other comment you just made? Like, does it totally negate? One of my favorite ones right now, and I'm saying this sarcastically, when people talk about some of the issues that are happening right now, is when people say, yeah, but what about that Black on Black crime? Black people know that crimes are committed by Black people. Studies show that we are more inclined to have a crime committed against us by someone in our communities that we live around. So just like there's Black on Black crime, guess what? There's white on white crime, and Mexican on his Mexican crime. And that's really what it is. Unfortunately, in our demographic, that's the only one, as in Black people, we hear about to the same degree. Now, is it true that we may commit more crimes against our fellow African Americans than others? I don't know. I don't have the data. Because to me, in this moment, that's not the subject. I told somebody yesterday that bringing up that, or, the number of babies that are aborted every year or anything like that, it's like being at a fundraiser for breast cancer. So maybe I'm at the Susan G. Komen event, I've walked, I'm advocating, I'm doing all those things. And then someone else is given a chance to give comments, and they say, yeah, this breast cancer thing is it's unfortunate, but why aren't you guys talking about prostate cancer? Or why aren't you talking about colon cancer? Duh. That doesn't mean nobody in the room cares about those things, but that's not this event. And so just think about, because it comes off as you're not listening, you're just prepared for your next statement. And, in the workplace, one of the things I find very infuriating is if I'm having a conversation with someone and it's clear to me that they're really not listening to me, all they're doing is preparing in their mind what they're going to say next. It's like they're literally waiting for the next pause so they can jump in and say, yeah, but you're not listening to me. So if we're going to use social media and all these other platforms to have these discussions, then let's do it in a mature and adult way. Because there are some people who I know really want to be empathetic. They want to share their concern and express it, but they're afraid to because they don't know how, and they don't want it to be misinterpreted. And for some people that I am associated with, I've said, I appreciate your attempt. And I try to gently, if I feel that there was something even in the attempt that they could learn from, share it, but not in a beat 'em up way. And I think that's some things that we can do. But again, this is just a microcosm, or it could be macro in this regard, because race relations are, this is a real issue today in this country. And it seems like it's gotten worse, actually, at least in my opinion. This is Angela's opinion. But this happens every day. Disagreements, not listening to people, fighting to be right instead of listening so that you can hear people. There's a saying that I use often in training, and I picked it up from my mentor, Paul Martinelli, but he says often that people can't hear you unless they've been heard. And if there was ever such a time to really use that phrase, I would say right now, because people who are trying to convince people that they shouldn't feel singled out or be as upset as they are or respond the way that they have, they can't hear you. They really can't. They can't hear you. And it's not that they don't want to hear you. I believe they literally cannot hear you because they are so just, as we say, up to here. It's just, I have nothing left. And it's even hard to express what that feels like, what that looks like. And it'll show up at work. It'll show up when we go out and have an exchange, for those of us who are going out for dinner. If, it feels like we're being slighted or ignored for similar reasons. Because what happens is once we have the lens that we have in life, we begin to see things through that lens. And that's everybody. So when you disagree with people, first give them an opportunity to speak their piece. Ask them clarifying questions. Say, a perfect phrase, one of my favorites is, can you tell me more about that? Can you just tell me more? Because while that's not my experience, I don't know that to be true. I would never negate the fact that it's your truth or try to devalue your experience. So what would help me is if you could tell me more about that. Tell me more about what that feels like as a parent of a young Black son who's afraid to let her son go outside. Tell me what it feels like to be married to a man of color and be afraid when he works late that if he gets stopped. Tell me what that feels like, because I really don't know. Tell me what that feels like. It doesn't even mean that you have to agree with the feeling. You don't have to agree that every scenario the person told you was accurate. But what you're doing is you're giving them a space. You're giving them an opportunity to express themselves. And maybe, as Linda just posted in the comments, timing is everything. You could be so right about your next point, but it's lost because this wasn't the time. This wasn't the time to say what you said. And it's the same thing, this is a two-way street when there's disagreement. So if you invite me to correspond, then let me correspond or have the discussion. And if you don't want to hear what I have to say, then don't pretend like you do. We get to choose. Like I said, I ignore people. I mute them on social media. I unfriend people with regularity. I have the feeling that I will be doing that again in the next week or so, because some things are just too much. And I get to decide whose words and space I want in my life. And, I have to protect my peace. And I would encourage everybody else to do the same. But just know that when you disagree, hey, mama, when you disagree with people, you don't have to be disagreeable. Some other things that I've seen, name calling. Name calling is never acceptable. We can disagree vehemently. I mean, to the point that I'm like red in the face, that I almost want to fight. But I don't think I should call you a name, and I don't think you should call me one. And I think we've gotten more and more comfortable with name calling because we see it on the public platform more and more now. Name calling is never acceptable. And I think it behooves all of us to call that out when we see it. That is a form of bullying. And in a regular workplace, if people were to name call and be disparaging towards one another, technically they could lose their job. Unfortunately, Twitter is a place that people do that. And certain people are not held to the standards of the laws that govern this land when we talk about anti-bullying. Like, we would tell our children that it would be unacceptable to call names, and if someone called them names, hey, Lachelle, we would say to them, we should report that because that's bullying. And then we jump right on social media and we call people names. And we, it's the collective we, and it goes all the way up to the highest office in the land. Name calling is never acceptable. Again, we can disagree, but we don't have to be disagreeable. To tell people they're stupid, that their opinions are stupid, again, we don't have to agree, but we shouldn't do those kinds of things. Trust me, I know I think some things and feel some things that a lot of people would think is a little weird or bizarre or different because they're from a different culture, they're from a different place, they've had different experiences. And I'm cool with that. I actually laugh and say, okay, you may find this a little bizarre. But if one of those people were to come back to me and say, that's stupid, this is a whole different energy. Now you've taken me to another place. And so that's not acceptable behavior. It's okay for you not to understand it. But if I were to start speaking in a different language, you don't understand those words either. Would they be stupid? Or would it be something that you don't have the levels of awareness or the knowledge to comprehend? And I think that's how we have to approach different people's lens. And when we see that maybe their lens is not complete because there are some things that we can add to the story, that's where the conversation should really begin. Listen, love, be empathetic. These are some of the characteristics to open the doors to communication. But I can just tell you right now, and again, I do a lot of communication training. Part of the reason why communication is a problem, and it's not just in these issues, it's across the board, it's in marriages, it's with parents and kids, it's with friends, it's everywhere. It's because we typically talk to people because we think we have something valuable to say, when our approach should be that we talk to people because we value them. And if the people you're talking to you don't value, then why are you having the conversation? And again, I'm guilty of it too, because sometimes somebody will say something and I believe is so, just like, did they really just say that? That I feel compelled to shed some knowledge. I'm like, maybe I can help them. But I can honestly tell you, and again, I can't speak for everybody else, I literally believe that I can help people. Like, I think that if I were to say something and say it right, it would make a difference. Some people think I'm naive. Some people think I'm Pollyanna-ish, as that phrase goes. And I might be all those things. I said it the other day when I was talking about Central Park Amy, if you haven't watched that video yet. I believe that we can have an impact, a positive one, in the lives of people with training, with personal growth, with introspection. But we have to do the work and they have to want to grow. But I believe that everybody can be helped. I believe that. So again, you don't have to agree. But I think if I didn't believe that, I couldn't do the work that I do, right? So long story short, a lot of tension right now, so check in, tell me how you're doing, how you're dealing with things. Is there anything I can do to help? Stay safe because, coronavirus is not gone, right? So we've just forgotten about that in the last few days. Because right now in different cities, some other things are taking place to bring attention to some things that need to be corrected. But we have to stay safe, but safety is beyond just our physical safety, right? There's the thing called mental health. And again, I am trying to protect my peace. I shared with somebody else today that I have not watched those videos that are, and that's my choice. I don't begrudge anybody who has. I heard what was on them, and that was enough for me. But I know me, I'm highly sensitive, I'm emotional, and I'm a visual learner. To watch those videos would take me to a place that I don't want to go. So in protecting Angela's peace, Angela's not going to watch them. I don't think they're going to tell me anything I didn't already know. It's certain movies I don't watch, right? So this is not just in real life, and that's a choice. And you can say, I got my head buried in the sand, I'm naive. You can say all that stuff too. Okay. I still believe we have to, Lachelle, you said a mouthful right there. Lachelle says, if it costs me my peace, it's too expensive. Amen. Amen. And that's exactly why I'm not going to watch them. But they need to be seen, and they need to be seen by the right people. And I am grateful that there is video. So let me be perfectly clear. Just because I don't want to see the video doesn't mean that I'm not glad the video exists. So it's Friday. We're nearing the end of May. For many of us, we've been in the house for 3 months. A lot of stress, a lot of tension, a lot of anxiety. And so basically all these situations did really was just compound some of the emotions that people were feeling. So I leave you with be compassionate, even when you don't agree with responses, right? I'm not going to sit here and tell you I agree with the way that a lot of people are responding. And I'm specifically talking about looting. I'm talking about fires and all those things. I don't agree with that, but I understand it. I understand it. When we talk about the analogy of the pipe, and I'm sure many of you have heard it, if too much pressure, pipe's gonna burst. And for so many people, this is what that feels like. We can very easily, sometimes separate the being from the behavior when it benefits us, right? So let's just say, I use this analogy with a friend today that we've seen cases where women have been in abusive relationships for years and put up with it. Or it could be a man. And then one day that spouse comes home and just says something. And it's a trigger to that abused person that this is what usually happens before the beating comes. But you know what? After 20 years, I'm not taking that no more. And the person, so other than saying something, did nothing else. And the next thing you know, the abused, assaulted and or killed the abuser. If you ever saw the movie with Farrah Fawcett, right? The Burning Bed, that's when those kind of legislated cases start coming to be, because it was a pattern. And the courts ruled that when she reacted, it was justifiable because of the pattern. So one day she just snapped. And we will say, especially if we know somebody that's ever been in that situation, that we understand, and that doesn't make that person a bad person. We don't call them names. We said they just snapped. Is it possible that some of these people in the streets right now have snapped? That it's just been too many years. It's just been too much. And they say, I'm just, whatever. Some of these people think I'm gonna die in these streets anyway. So I may as well not, have my say, or just release all this anxiety. Because right now they don't know what to do with it. And a lot of that is because we haven't given ourselves the coping skills to deal with anxiety, depression, stress, anger, and things like that. And sometimes that's really bad in our community too, because we have this pride thing, like we won't go for professional help. So again, just try to understand. You don't have to agree, but try to understand. And then remind yourself about the Boston Tea Party. Was that a rebellion? I'm just asking. Right? So don't act like this country hasn't had its share of rebellious activity that we saluted. Including just 2 weeks ago when people were protesting the stay-at-home orders. And I saw tons of posts saying these people are fighting for their liberties, and people were congratulating them. So just be mindful when you see it one way, and then when another group of people do something, you see it another. That's an indication to you and to me that I have an unconscious bias. So in other words, I perceive the same action done by a different group differently than I do for another. And again, we're unconsciously biased with individuals. I'll leave you with this last example. Years ago, when I was a manager in the government, I had another manager come to me and complain about her employee. And she was like, I send her messages and she's real short and with me, and she does this, that, and the other. And then it was an issue about this person later wanted to take off or miss something. And the supervisor was like, I'm going to tell her no because of this, that, and the other. And the only thing I said was, let me ask you one question. If it wasn't Angela and instead it was Addie, would you have the same answer? And her eyes got big and said, oh my gosh, no. Because of the lens and the relationship she began to have with this one person, she saw their not wanting to attend a training as a slight, a snub, and a direct indictment to her supervision. When I just, same story and switched the names, she immediately said, oh my gosh, yeah, I would let him be off and wouldn't think anything about it. That's when you have an unconscious bias. That's it. And it's unconscious because you're not aware of it. Other things have happened that have kind of filtered your thinking. Everybody has them. We do it with our kids. One kid could say something, be like, I know he lying. I don't even need to see the evidence. He lying because he lie all the time. And that kid could be telling the truth. That's an unconscious bias. That kid doesn't get the benefit of the doubt. And when we use these terms in race situations, people all of a sudden get so offended, like, how dare you say I have an unconscious bias? You do. We all do. It's unconscious. So be aware. And then ask yourself the questions. Am I seeing it this way? Change the people. Anybody remember the movie A Time to Kill? That's when I first fell in love with Matthew McConaughey. Oh my gosh, another conversation for another day. When he had that jury close their eyes and walk them through that case, and then that last sentence was, now imagine she was white. That's what got Samuel L. Jackson's character off. Because up until that point, they couldn't even in their mind conceive that it was justified that this father, this Black man, would kill, these white men. But the moment they heard that same story, they closed their eyes, he took them play by play. And then the last thing he said was, now imagine the girl was white. So that's what we're asking you to do. And we need to do that too, right? We as everybody. That's in work. That's in our marriages. That's with our kids. We just need to try to see life through somebody else's lens sometime. And when they want to share their lens, give them the space to do it. And don't judge them. Don't tell them they're wrong. Don't come back with the yeah, buts. Just listen and see what you can learn. Because I often find that I have been guilty of some of the things that people say have hurt them. And it wasn't intentional. I'm a pretty nice person. I think I am. Most people tell me I am. They tell me I'm a little direct sometimes, but usually fair and nice. But I've been guilty of it too. And I train on this stuff every day. So what makes you think you're any different? So again, it's Friday. I went a whole lot longer than I normally do, but I've always in my life, no matter what's been happening, wanted to be a part of the solution. I believe educating people. I believe listening to people. I believe in valuing people. And, this is my way of trying to do that via social media. So I don't want to be a part of the problem. I don't want to add another log on a fire. I want to be part of the solution. Again, I love to hear your feedback. I love to hear your thoughts. If there's anything I can do to help facilitate a discussion with your company, your organization, your friends, your community, reach out. And I'm not talking about for money, right? So yeah, I get paid for my services. I just want to know that I can be a part of the solution because this has to stop. It really does. All right. I'm getting emotional, so I better go. You guys have a great weekend, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.